Hello, Happy New Year. It is Wired and Tired is back. I have a bunch of guests today, which is unusual. It's usually just Jeff and I. But I'm Jenny-Jaymes Gunn, and this is Wired and Tired. And then my co-host, Jeff.
My name's Jeff Scott. I'm so happy to be starting off the year with a lovely group of people on January 1st. Thank you all for coming.
That was genuine.
Yeah, I know, it hurt. It had to hurt. It was painful.
I'm so good at faking sincerity these days.
Came from the bowels of his soul right there. Hello, mama. But we're going to talk about one of the main reasons why we have actually 4 candidates, 2 on each of my sides, is about truths and myths about who they are as a candidate, who they are as a human being even. And I think anytime that you become a public figure or a celebrity like me, you get myths put about you. I mean, I had myths, especially back in Amarillo, Texas, crazy stuff. When I became real controversial, I'm like, gosh, I wish I got to partake in half of what you accused me of. It sounded fun. That life sounded way better than my normal life. But it becomes very fascinating, and we're going to dive right into it. But first, I want everybody to introduce themselves, and we'll start on my left.
Yay! I'm Tera. I'm candidate for County Commission at Large, and I'm your healthcare advocate.
I'm Cade Lee, and I'm a candidate for District 3 County Commission.
Yay!
I'm Stephen DiFiore, Libertarian candidate for the governor's race in 2020.
Woo!
And I am Jeff Scott, also known as Tired.
My wife.
North Carolina State Senate District 37.
And we'll jump right into the myths. And one of the reasons I had Tera in mind when I thought of this theme, because I campaign for her. I'm on her team, and so a lot of people now associate me with her. So when I'm out and about doing my activism, I catch the flack for her, and I also explain. And one of them is for Tera is, well, her main theme is Medicare for all, and that's a national thing. It's not a local deal. So she's a one-issue candidate. And the criticism is that it's also something that isn't really involving the county commission, and so the first myth I would love for you to address.
Sure, absolutely. I get that all the time. People are like, that Medicare for all doesn't have anything to do with the Board of County Commissioners, and I said yes. That's why in my speech I say I became a legislative advocate for Medicare for all. However, if you look at the Board of County Commissioners and you look at their budget, their number 1 thing is education. Their number 2 thing is health and human services. And as a team, many of us here actually stopped temporarily a policy with Medic, where the Board of County Commissioners were about to garnish wages if you had delinquent Medic bills. And so we went down there and we protested. Cade and Cano were part of that protest, and we got it temporarily stopped. So the answer is the Board of County Commissioners, they directly impact our health here in Mecklenburg County. And when I get on that board, I will look through these policies and I will make sure that they are for the people and not for the establishment, like Novant Health. Like I had to sign last week a paper saying that anything that was not covered under my insurance, I would pay out of pocket. Okay, well, here's the thing. How do we know how much that thing cost? And are we going to be charged? I've had very unreasonable bills in the past that my insurance has just denied, because insurance companies, they profit off of not covering us. So the Board of County Commissioners, what I plan to do as your healthcare advocate is to scan for policies that do not help the public, the people. When you are sick, the county can give money if the say Novant doesn't get enough money. The county can say, we can't pay for our bills. The county can step in and supplement them some. They do that for Medic.
Yeah.
They pay 17% of Medic's bills for the people that can't pay. So I would be an advocate for that. looking at the actual board.
Well, we're gonna
Yeah.
segue
Okay.
because I want to give the other candidates
Sure.
a chance too. I think the big myth with you, Cade, is
Are we going to get the opportunity just to ask a couple follow-up questions just to make sure that we understand her?
absolutely.
Well, I was
you
just
want
gonna-
you want to do the follow up now, or
Well, yeah. Let's give her, if you don't mind.
Fire-
I was just
fire
gonna.
away.
I was just gonna say that first of all, let me compliment you on sort of being at the grassroots and trying to figure out what's really going on and how it affects us. That's very important, and that's something I could do better. So there you go.
You're an inspiration to ourselves.
But I was wondering if he introduced.
Jenny.
Jenny introduced you as a single issue candidate, right?
Well,
And so that,
I mean,
that's my myth.
and that's
Yeah,
the
that's
myth,
the
right?
the myth is
Yeah,
that I'm
yeah.
only campaigning on Medicare for all. No, my image is that I'm a legislative advocate for Medicare for all.
Mm.
So for a year and a half,
Yeah.
I hounded the government about Medicare for all. And so people think that I represent Medicare for all.
Right.
And the actual truth is that the Board of County Commissioners, the second largest funding is Health and Human Services. And so I am campaigning on
Right.
Health and Human Services.
I understand that. So what's your view about single issue candidates though, and on the other side, people who are only looking for candidates who represent, one view. So
Sure.
we know in
Okay.
Charlotte there's a lot of single issue voters having to do with very personal issues such as abortion, pro-life,
Sure.
pro-choice, and this is a difficult issue for us because sometimes you run into voters as candidates. It's difficult. Sometimes you run into voters who are single issue. Do you really
Okay.
want to, if they don't agree with you, do you want to spend any time with them?
Well, I
You
think
know?
it's always nice to be nice. I can tell you I'm not a single issue candidate. Can I give my platform real quick?
Just stay on the
so-
topic of single issue voting.
I do want to clarify the question though,
Yeah.
because I had a little fuzzy logic there. So I think there is a difference between a single issue voter
Yeah,
constituent and a single issue candidate.
right.
So I think what Tera is saying is that for one, her platform is way broader than just medical. I mean,
Sure.
because I know what your platform is,
Right,
and I'm not gonna speak for it. I'm gonna let her speak for it since
Right.
she's here. But I think for a voter that says, "Well, my primary issue is I want to stop abortion,"
Right.
for example,
Yes.
and at any cost, I'm pro-life.
Yeah.
So if
Well-
that candidate is, pro-choice, I'm going to have a problem with that candidate, and so I think that's what you're more or
Well,
less asking.
let me just cut to the chase
Yeah, fire away.
because I find single issue voters very annoying, and I find single issue candidates equally, if not more, annoying. So
I gotta come out then.
so as
At some
a,
point.
so as a candidate, I don't want to be a single issue candidate.
Sure.
I want to talk about an array of issues. Some are more important than others, obviously. And as a voter, I want to think about the whole array of what we're getting, the whole package, all of the features. So that's
Sure,
my point, because
absolutely.
you brought up single issue voting, and it's a peeve, right? So that to me, that you pushed my button once again, Jenny.
I always push your
cannot-
button. It's
I
my
cannot-
job to
cannot.
push your button. I
So
do want to move.
disappointed.
I
Yeah,
do
let's-
want to let's
right.
because I want to make sure I'm
Yeah,
watching the
yeah,
time. I want to
yeah,
make sure,
yeah.
and then we'll come. We're going to circle back
Yeah,
around.
yeah.
But I think with Cade, I mean, you're running against a Democratic incumbent.
Right.
Why not just leave it alone? Why are you running? Because it seems like you're overturning the apple cart.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and I'm, I think the big difference. I know that that progressive can be a definitely buzzword, but I consider myself more progressive, more left leaning than my opponent, the incumbent. But also, I think the big thing for me is the reason that I'm shaking the tree is we've had 10 years of the incumbent in District 3, and nothing's changed. Nothing's happened. Most of the people in District 3 don't know who their county commissioner is. They don't know him, and if they do know him, a lot of them don't like him. He's elected by the same people every time, and there's no outreach for voters. There's no outreach for community services, health and human services, anything in District 3, and part of that's because the good at large incumbents that we have are kind of pushed to the side by my opponent as the District 3 incumbent, and he just chooses not to do his job, either as the District 3 commissioner or as the chairman. So I decided to actually be someone who came into play that's willing to stand up for people and not just for the seat that I'm running for.
Cool. Any questions or comments from
Who is the
Lieutenant Galley?
District 3 incumbent?
George Dunlap, the chairman.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he's going out. He's going right after the
Go
very
big or go
powerful.
home, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but it's a district that you live in and you
Right.
want to represent, and I think I like to see youthful people in politics, because I don't want to see just old white men in it. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I mean, I think there's a lot of times there's a lot of ageism against young candidates.
Oh, absolutely.
And then also against really older candidates like a Bernie Sanders that is at the top end of electable age in my opinion, but I look at the energy level. I mean, look at the fire, and challenging people's perceptions of what it is to run for office and be above 70 years old. I think it's kind of cool. It's
Right.
Well, I was just going to ask a question.
Yeah, of course.
So one of the disturbing developments in politics over the last
Right.
couple of years has been the strengthening of incumbents. In particular,
Mhm.
our producer Christian Cano here was a victim of the Democratic establishment, going out against people who were who were agitating too strongly for progressive values.
Right.
And this has been made very explicit. Letters to some professionals who are working for a Democratic challengers to incumbents have really gotten screwed over, and they're in a sense being blackballed. So, have you experienced any of that? Have people called you up and said, "Stay the hell out," or what has happened? What's your perception of this
To a
issue?
certain extent. So before I announced my candidacy, I was definitely I'm still known as the troublemaker in Mecklenburg politics, but I was calling out the mayor for different things that she was doing that would corrupt the mayor pro tem, different people in city council, county commission, everybody. And so people saw me as just kind of a divisive figure to begin with. And so whether that's a factor in it or not, the party, both in Mecklenburg and elsewhere, has definitely, they do tend to support incumbents. And obviously the party or any party, you're not supposed to endorse anyone.
Right.
And they definitely, all the establishment, regardless of party lines, definitely likes to tip the scale in favor of the incumbents. And so I have seen that. There's been more, though, I would say, rather than from the party, it's been more so general because of my age that I've gotten pushback for, and which is the interesting part, seeing as I advocate successfully for more issues than my opponent and some of the incumbents that are.
So I just want to compliment Cade because the reality is he is coming from grassroots organizing. People don't understand that grassroots organizers are 100% volunteer most of the time. We have been volunteering our time. That's why Cade and somebody asked me last night, why are you always with Cade? Because he's always there. Like the truth is, we always show up.
Showing up.
To showing up.
Yes.
Like
yes,
your
that's
job.
right. Yeah,
Your job is
Yeah.
to show up. And not only does Cade show up, he produces. Like he had Beto come and he organized a beautiful, it was a huge event, and he got a presidential candidate here. And he gets on the news all the time. So he's doing the work of an elected official.
and moving it to the right side of me. And my myth about both of y'all, because y'all are running for a third party, the mythological libertarian party that a lot of people don't understand it. There's a lot of myths about the deal is probably where I'm going with this. I'm more so for Steve running as governor. And it's like, are you hurting the Republican Party by running? By you taking conservative votes, are you stealing votes from conservative candidates
I
as
hope
a governor?
so.
Okay.
So libertarians are not left or right necessarily. Okay. It's a completely unique political philosophy. As I said, at one point, most parties, Team Red, Team Blue, they take a series of policy positions that they like, and they rationalize back to a make-believe principle. Whereas the Libertarian Party does it in reverse. We start at a base set of principles, and we figure out where the policy is that we would advocate for, is driven from those first principles. So some of those are, very much maybe right-leaning or conservative. We think smaller government is a good idea because we don't believe that men in marble halls know what's best for you. We believe that you do. So the smaller the government, the less these men in marble halls can mess with your life. We also believe in individual choice. Well, that goes with what you put in your body, for example, or how you choose to live your life, or whom you associate with. And that can be something that people on the left side of the spectrum really advocate for. We're very much an individualist sort of political movement. And basically, the ideal world that the libertarian wants, typically, is a world where the individual can live their best life with as little barriers to that as possible. As long as you're not hurting anybody else. What was that old saying? If it neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg, of what concern is it to me? And that's one of the things. So there is this myth that, libertarians are Republican light.
Yeah.
And there are a few Republicans in the party. A lot of people who are not happy with the Republican Party will leave, come to the Libertarian Party, and most will go back over time, right? But the same thing happens with the Democrats. Most of the grassroots efforts that we have in, say, Mecklenburg County, in a big city, come from people who, are more left of center. But that's just because of where we are. The ideas of freedom, liberty, individuals being able to live their best life, that transcends the binary of right or left, red or blue, Democrat or Republican. And one of the reasons why I'm running for governor is because, most North Carolinians are going to have a choice between the party that doesn't care for them on this side and the party that doesn't care for them on this side. What is going to change? Either the Republican will be in office in the governor's house and really nothing will change, or the Democrat will. Now, some people will, feel bad, but at the end of the day, what the governor is supposed to do, what really changes? The General Assembly kind of rules the roost anyway. So what do you need the governor to do? And in my opinion, the governor should advocate for the people of North Carolina and for the state, right? Because the state is a sovereign entity within this great experiment of the United States. And there's a lot of stuff that Washington does that really hurts North Carolina and the people who live here. And I think the state government in Raleigh should do more to push back on those bad policies as best it can to improve the lives of the people who live here and choose to live here.
Right, and I know that it came up when you ran for office in District 9, and that you were, I think you got more attacks from the Republicans than probably the Democrats, because you're stealing votes, you're hurting us. We're gonna have a hotly contested race.
That's right.
And if you show well, it's gonna hurt the Republican Party, which is basically vote shaming.
Yeah.
So
it's hard to gauge that. So it'll be an interesting experiment in 2020 as Stephen campaigns throughout the state, and who is going to attack him and from what angle. They're going to ignore him as much as they possibly can, just like they ignored me by spending $25 million.
But I can see why they would ignore you, though.
Yeah,
Just
no,
getting
no,
that
no,
in there.
No. No, I can understand that too. If you're an incumbent and you're a powerful party,
Yeah.
and if you're facing someone like Dunlap, the best strategy is to ignore. Like Dunlap's best strategy is to just ignore you.
And he doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Because you have a very interesting juxtaposition in your state senatorial campaign, because the fact that you have an incumbent of Jeff Jackson that you're running against that's fairly popular, but you have a new district. It's been shuffled. The deck has been shuffled.
That's right.
That is
It's like
tends to be more moderate and more conservative.
Like the lower fifth of the city. It's like a triangle there it's South Mecklenburg up to Myers, Myers Park area down to Pineville, Matthews.
And so you have a Republican running, a Libertarian running, and a Democrat running.
Right.
It's going to be a very fascinating because Jeff tends to be fairly moderate, very. He doesn't take a hard line to the left, even though he does advocate for a lot of groups. He does March in Pride every year. He does.
That's right.
He does show up more than a lot of other Democratic candidates do. I will say that, but it is fascinating because on a lot of major issues in the state assembly, he does tend to go down the middle a lot, and you're going to have a Republican that's probably going to be fairly conservative, and then the Libertarian in the middle.
Yeah.
So how do you amplify that message? I mean, because really, could you not be washed out a little bit?
Yeah. So that's really a question for both Steve and I, because I mean, Steve and I have worked those Pride events every year. Steve worked it was a prepper event,
Yeah,
right?
prepper camp is a more conservative leaning thing out in the mountains.
So before we go into talking about what I think I'm going to need to do, I just want to hear as a follow up to Steve, I'd like to know a little bit about the prepper thing and what we have to deal with on the right, because we get a lot of flack from the right. So following up on what Jenny said about me getting attacked from the right for taking their votes. When the margin between Harris and McCready was only 900 votes, and I got 5,000, so I was attacked by both sides because both sides felt that I screwed up their margin, right? So McCready otherwise would have gotten maybe 4,000 of my votes or something, but Harris people thought they might have got 4,000 of my votes, in which case it wouldn't have been thrown into disarray. We would not have had a special election. So
and Harris's team would know because they did a lot of vote picking up that year too.
Yeah.
So I'll say one criticism that, for example, a lot of libertarians have is not showing up to delegation meetings or not showing up to town halls and things like that. And the answer to that is pretty simple. Most libertarians, believe it or not, are just working class people. People have this idea that libertarians are Koch funded. Koch brothers, the K. Koch brothers funded, groups and conservatives and plants, and we're a wealthy, moneyed group. And most libertarians, almost everyone that I've ever met, we're just working class people. We get up, we work our 9 to 5, or we work 80 hours a week, and we advocate for working class ideas. Now, it's a little different from, let's say, other groups of people who say, the working class needs this or that. Libertarians say, we just want the ability to work. We want those barriers out of our way so that we can, make a living. And, when you're a working person and when you're trying to support a family, sometimes it's hard to, get to a Monday meeting or a Wednesday meeting. This might be the only, Wednesday podcast I can make because I'm usually working right now. Yeah. And a lot of libertarians, they work all the time, and it's really hard because you have to call someone up and have a meeting, at 9 o'clock at night after they've worked 14 hours, and sure, the political elite and the people who live in wealthy suburbs and all that, and maybe have cushy bankers hours jobs, they can make a 5 o'clock town hall meeting pretty easily. They can maybe take a day off or a morning off to go to something on Monday, but for a lot of us it's really hard.
Yeah, this is the dilemma of third parties, right? Just attracting activist people who can work. I mean, I'm semi-retired, so I can devote some time to this. While I still have some good years left, right? So I can do this, and we've got young people too. We've got Young Americans for Liberty or Freedom or whatever it is, and they sort of cycle through. But at a certain point, they decide, to get married and settle down, and they approach me at where I'm passing out my business cards, and they say they're holding their baby, and they've got a stroller, and they say, yeah, I used to be active in libertarian politics, but now I got to make a living. So I'd like to come to your meeting, but I can't come to your meeting, and good luck, because, maybe I'll be there in 20 years. Right?
So one take is that's interesting, and I didn't think about the parallels between all 4 candidates sitting here, is that as grassroots candidates, as all volunteer organizations, because none of y'all are professional politicians. You don't have a job in the political realms where it's paying you a 9-to-5 wage. So you're having to balance a home and work life plus run for office for all four of you, because you all have lives, I'm assuming, outside of politics. So do you have to adjust your campaigning to that? Do you have to be cognizant of a life-work balance plus adding that third realm of campaigning? I mean, because you're a mom, for example.
I am a mom.
And so-
I'm very fortunate that my parents live in my neighborhood and are very good babysitters, and that my husband is very interactive with our daughter. So when I'm on the campaign trail, he's usually with my daughter. That's usually not why he's not with me. But I definitely miss her at times. But I know that at the end of the day, I'm fighting for her.
And I mean,
Yeah, I mean, so I'm finishing my degrees at UNC Charlotte still. So I'm a young student candidate, and I'm actually pushing for progressive values. And so I'm lucky enough to be at the end of my degrees where I can take, online classes to finish out everything. But most people don't have the opportunity, and so young people especially definitely have a barrier as far as accessibility and.
or even outside the campaign too.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
class schedules can. I mean, if you're a full-time student of 12 hours or more,
Right.
Done that a long time. But it is a tough. It's a tough thing. I mean, it is a job. I mean,
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
when you're a student, you're working,
Right.
and so.
When some are doing that and working, and
Yeah.
so it's and I'm lucky enough that I could leave my manager job to do this, but it's but most people don't have that opportunity, and so it's definitely a balance, and you have to. It's luckily I think all of us are probably pretty good at time management, or else we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Well, and you look at somebody like Jeff that's been running. You ran 2 election cycles.
Yeah, and,
Mr.
and,
Nine
and one
an hour.
before that. So
For Jeff,
2017,
it's a way of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I didn't have a grand plan, but and that 2018 thing really took
Right.
me for a loop, and it was kind of it's like getting off. Had I dropped out at that point, it would have seemed like a big waste of an opportunity, because the party had an opportunity, I had an opportunity, people in North Carolina had an opportunity. I don't know that we took advantage of it. Just to well, let me take a moment here, just as a.
I'll disagree with you on that real quick.
Okay, so hang on. I just want to thank our viewers. We've got some viewers, and we just want to thank them for checking in, and tell your friends about it and share it later,
Thank you.
because it's an interesting discussion we're having today about the very different campaigns. We don't have any Republicans here, but we do have 2 minor party candidates, Libertarian Party candidates, and 2.
I know a Republican, if that helps.
Yeah. I've spoken to Republicans
I
before.
played one on a TV show once. No, I mean, but we do have. I think it's a fascinating because in y'all's grassroots activism,
Yeah.
because I would consider a Libertarian Party an entire party of grassroots, honestly. I mean,
Yeah.
because you are battling for airtime, stage time,
Yeah.
having any kind of voice, and as 2 grassroots progressive activists, we're always fighting to get on stage. I know as a sexual and gender minority, actually in my own movement, I mean, trans makes up a very small part of the LGBTQI deal that you're always trying to amplify. You're always, seems like you're always fighting. You're always like trying to come up for air and then struggle. And
Very
so
stressful.
being trans in the South is not a picnic, I can tell you that, no matter how many allies you have. But in one thing I wanted to throw out there is the economics of running for office, and also the economics, how it plays a part, because we talked about this earlier about in 1992 how it was the economy stupid, and it's kind of coming into play both locally with the medic deal. That was a very controversial local issue. You have this state house, the assembly, that's always battling over budgets and where money's going, the federal contributions, federal mandated things. So there's a very fascinating deal on the economics of politics, but also the economy in general. And one thing is fascinating with y'all being grassroots, even dollars and cents makes a huge difference in what you do. So it's one of the things that we probably need to cover at some point. But I think you had another point real quick.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, before we go into the economics of campaigning, is that, Steve and I from a distance at first and then close up found that, the Democratic Party has been pretty good in its strategy to, have, solid voter communications and these grassroots groups, and they've even, in a sense, they've been not overly successful isn't the right phrase I'm looking for, but they've kind of taken over groups like the League of Women Voters and groups that would normally be nonpartisan, to the point where Republicans, unless you're like Matt Ridenhour and you got a lot of, courage to show up at these events, they have taken over these channels. And so I found during 2019 that some of my communication channels were just completely shut off. Some college campuses, the League of Women Voters, I was begging them for months and months and months to put something on, and it was just very difficult to get them to move. So my sense is that the Democratic Party, for better or worse, and they've obviously been very successful in Charlotte and Mecklenburg, whether at the local level and at the state office level. This county has been extremely successful. The Democrats in this county have been extremely successful, and they've taken over these institutions. Now that makes it, I don't know if that makes it easier or more difficult, because Republicans have just said, we're not going to spend money. If you want to be a millionaire and you want to pop into one of these races, or if you want to do it for vanity, or we're not going to support you. The Republicans are smart with their money. They're not going to be spending on vanity candidates, and they're not going to be spending for people that can only get 20% of the vote. So they know how to spend their national party money. They're very, very businesslike, very clear. Mm-hmm. So that means there could be, that's what we're hoping, there could be a third party opportunity, small donors, to make some inroads in this democratically dominated area.
Well, it's a very progressive city when you look at the dynamics, and it's bringing people from all over the country and all over the world. I mean, you said a very diverse, ethnically based city. I mean, with 17% Latinx, strong African American communities, strong.
That's right.
But our advantage, Steve and I's advantage, is that we're not social conservatives. I mean, social conservatives have lost all the social battles over the last 50 years. We are not part of that movement. We are not reactionaries against all the battles that social conservatives have lost. Okay.
Right. Well, and that's a good point, because they are a lot of the social conservatives in the Republican Party, which I think is a very boisterous minority.
Right. The donut types, the pro-war on drug types. Yeah.
That has gotten them a pushback. Being anti-LGBT, same-sex marriage, anti-trans. Yeah. It replaced the governor here in this state. And it got rid of Dan Bishop, but he came back. Darth Vader lives again, man.
It's a bait and switch.
Yeah, it's a bait and switch. For District 9. But, and one of the things that's fascinating is, because you guys kind of, as a third party, you do have that ability to be a comedian and have the free agency to be as progressive as you want on social issues. Like, just leave us alone, just teacher, leave us alone, like the Pink Floyd song. I mean, just, stay out of our lives. We want government as small as it can and be less obtrusive. And then a strategy of progressives, for the most part, is we want to wield the government power and spending power to help humanity. So we don't necessarily believe in small government. When you're looking at Medicare for all, you're talking about Medicare basically taking over the medical industry. Which has its ups and its downs. I'm for it.
And sometimes it's an issue of wanting to go in a similar direction, but you have a very big disagreement about what the vehicle is. So, for example, Medicare for all. What's the end state? So people can afford the medical care that they need without going bankrupt. Like, boiled it down. That's my understanding of it. You don't want people to go bankrupt when they have to go get an MRI or something. Now, I have to get MRIs twice a year, and they're really, really expensive. There was a guy in, I believe it was Winston-Salem, an imager, a licensed radiologist, and he figured out a way that, like, oh, I bet I can do, I can rent an MRI machine and then, offer MRIs for $700. Well, an MRI for $700, that's pretty good. Consider when you have to go to the
5,000.
hospital, 5 to 10 to 20,000 depending on your insurance level. He goes, I bet I could do it even more and turn a profit if I could buy an MRI machine. I could do between 200 to 700. But the state said, oh, sorry, you don't have permission to buy an MRI machine. You have to get a certificate of need. And he's like, well, what's a certificate of need? Well, you have to go to the hospital and get their permission to buy the MRI machine to compete with us. So he goes, oh, okay. So he goes to the hospital and goes, hey, can I buy an MRI machine so I can give people MRIs for like $200 to $700? And they go, yeah, no thank you. These are anti-competitive laws, things that the government does that restricts the choice of people to get the medical care that they need. Now, does every medical procedure fall into that category? Probably not. But if you have the ability to allow for innovative people who want to do right by their community and reduce the cost of healthcare, why would you stand in the way of making that happen? In North Carolina, the General Assembly has the ability to get rid of certificate of need laws. They could, and that would almost overnight reduce the cost of so many different medical procedures. CAT scans, x-rays, MRIs, some kinds of outpatient surgery, but they will not do it. And you got to ask yourself why. And this is one thing that can be done that I think everyone can agree on. Just get rid of this law and let people who know what they're doing figure out ways to serve their community, serve it for the best. Because I don't know about you, I have a self-interest in this. I'm tired of having to pay $10,000 a year, to be put in a magnetic tube, when really I should only be paying maybe $1,000 a year to do that, which is not cheap, but it's affordable for me.
Well, and a big point is the local battle with Medic, for example, where people were paying for basically a medical Uber for $1,200 to $1,500, and we're going, where's that money going? Why is people that are making $8, $9, $10 an hour getting a Uber bill to go to the hospital for $1,200 to $1,500? And
Right.
we
So
were seeing
there's-
over and over again they were getting, because the Board of County Commissioners was just going to rubber stamp that through and let Medic do whatever they want. And I know y'all both led the charge on that. And one, why was the price so dang high?
Because they privatized it.
Yeah, so I can.
Well, wait a second. Go ahead.
Okay,
You
so
know more.
I'll explain the Medic
Yeah,
issue.
yeah.
Okay, so the actual cost to ride on Medic is $500. However, because people don't pay, Medic has upped the price to $1,200. So they went down to the county commissioners and they said, we either need more money from the county, we're going to garnish your wages, we want to garnish delinquent bills, or they were going to raise the rate on every citizen that used the product. Okay, those were your three options that Medic delivered. Okay, so in the 2019 budget, the Board of County Commissioners approved letting the county garnish wages. So October 1st, they were supposed to start wage garnishments. We came down there. Canna was one of the speakers. We went down there and we spoke about it, and they did research on it, and they said, wait, let's take this policy, let's look at it, let's see if we can find some alternative things. Now, here's my biggest problem with this policy. You have a company that threatened to increase your rates, that's already jacked up the prices, and they want to reach into your pocketbook when you can't pay and take out money. Okay? That gives the company too much power, because they can set these rates whatever they want, and then they can just reach into your paycheck and take it. The second thing is, one of the commissioners, I think it was Dunlap, was talking about, well, let's just help the poor people. Well, wait a minute. I pay taxes too. And like you, I pay $10,000 a year in medical costs.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a burden. Like, it's a really big burden.
Burden that doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be. So no, we all pay taxes. The rich people don't need to get, and I'm not saying that I'm rich, but they don't. Everybody needs to be included in this, and the reason why they need to be included is because that gives Medic too much power. A company that can set their rates to whatever they want. They are threatening to set their rates. They have already set their rates $600 higher than it actually cost. No, our citizens should not have wage garnishment for Medic.
So
Can I ask a question?
I wanted to segue real quick though, because I want this point missed. So, all of y'all's candidacies are about breaking the status quo. And when you have a state house that is allowing laws to keep prices artificially high, and nobody asks why, and in the same way, kind of with Medic's the same thing. Nobody asks why the rates are going up, or even having transparency. It's all coming back to status quo and accountability. Would y'all agree with that? And then ask the question.
I would agree with that. And to Medic's thing, if I'm a citizen that needs transportation to the hospital, what choices do I have other than Medic? Do I have other choices, or is it a monopoly? Because it seems to me
When you call
as though
911, you're getting Medic.
so it's a government monopoly.
However, people are choosing Uber, and people have in the community told me, and I don't know these services, but you have to know them in order, like, calling 911 is not going to get you an alternative. So I have an illness. I called 911. I told them to transport me to the doctors that see me in Huntersville because I did not take the trip to the closest hospital who does not handle my illness. Insurance refused to cover it. Okay, and you have to know the options before you call. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
So you had an emergency, and did the smart thing by going to your doctor instead of the emergency room at the hospital, and and they're punishing you for that.
I went to the ER, and this was many years ago before the whole Medic thing.
Yeah.
I went to the ER. I just have. I want people that know my medical history because it's so complex.
Right.
I don't want to change hospitals every 5 minutes.
Right.
And I was very comfortable with.
So you went to the place where you wanted to go rather than the place they wanted to take you. So you had to pay double or triple for the privilege of going to where you wanted to go rather than where they thought the cheap rate, whatever, the set rate. Yeah.
Insurance refused to cover me.
Okay. Well, can we all agree that is a stupid freaking system?
That is very stupid.
Okay.
You know what's best for you, not some bureaucrat.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted my illness is very complicated, and I needed, my doctors, some of them were in Concord.
Our producer and director, he sent me little notes and all that. So I think there is a misconception in politics. A lot of times when we hear, we're protecting people by passing these laws, but in two clear cases, with the MRI case and the twice a year visit you have to do, and in your medical condition, you've experienced it too, is a misconnection. When you create some of these laws that sound like they're defending people, they're actually burying people.
They're burying people.
Yeah.
Literally.
So the one thing that Steve and I would like to accomplish is kind of what, over time we've done with Chris, who calls himself a Democratic Libertarian now. And that is just...
He's a hybrid.
And that is to say, now you should be prepared to kind of look behind the screen, what's the Wizard of Oz thing, look behind the curtain,
right,
and see that there are these forces in play that are not working in your best interest. They're either working for the additional political power, secret profits, whatever that might be. And so a lot of the money that goes to some of these institutions gets, laundered back into people's political campaigns too. So this is a very corrupt cycle, and I think we've done a pretty good job of identifying it in other areas. But can you look at that in the medical profession? Because because the medic, the way that you described, you know, the prices keep going up because people can't pay, and so they dig deeper into taxpayers. You're describing the Affordable Care Act. So that's exactly the way that was structured, and then that's exactly the way Hillary Clinton wanted to structure the educational funding system. For the people who could pay, you know, they had a fee. People who couldn't pay were going to be able to essentially tax the people who could pay, right? In order to make it fair in it for education funding. So Steve and I hope I'm speaking for Stephen, but I'll let him speak for himself. We kind of recoil at that kind of local, state, federal redistribution. You know, it's just very inconsistent with our, you know, with the way we think things should be, with people corrupting these processes. Anyway, Steve, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, the more powerful that people have, the more powerful a level of government is, right? The more power it has to tell you what to do, and you know, a city only can do so much, right? And if it gets too oppressive, you leave. A state can only get so much, and if it gets too oppressive, you leave. You know, I left New York State because there was, you know, increasingly less opportunity there. Less opportunity primarily because of what Albany was doing. You know, you probably left California because it was harder and harder to get ahead based upon the policies that came out of Sacramento. You know, these things matter, but you know, for now we have the ability to move around. You know, I don't really care what New York does. I don't live there. I don't really care what California does. I don't live there. I'm a little worried about what Washington D.C. does, because if they do something that, you know, messes up the lives and the livelihoods of my fellow countrymen, where am I going to go, right? You know, even Charlotte, it's easier to hold, because I live in Charlotte, it's easier to hold our city council members accountable for their actions than it is, say, a governor or a senator, right? So, you know, I'm very much a fan of local government and localism, and I think there should be more of that, simply because it's easier for the people to get what they need from government that way.
But also, too, in a grassroots still, like, for you going up against a very powerful incumbent, I mean, you're talking about, you know, what is his title again?
Chairman.
The chairman. You're going up against a chairman that's been in that seat 10 years. That's a double-edged sword.
Right.
People will vote what they know, because in politics there's usually fraidy cats and copycats. So you're going up against a name, you're going up against a powerful person, and you know, that's a lot to combat. What mythology do you break down about him, and what mythology do you break down about yourself to keep your campaign going? How do you fight an incumbent that creates that kind of graft, that votes to, you know, garnish wages?
Right. So, I mean, I think one of the benefits to my campaign is that, again, people don't know him in my district. They haven't. He's been in that seat for 10 years. He's gotten comfortable. He doesn't feel like he has to work for it. He doesn't feel like he has to get to know people, to help people, to even respond to people's emails. He's just there. He goes to the events that he thinks best suit him. That'll either give his campaign money or that'll endorse him, because it's the same people every time. But from my race, it's a lot of people are just tired of him, and I want people to vote for me because of my values and my platform. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who vote against the chairman just because they don't want him in office anymore, and it's just because they don't really care what the alternative is, as long as it's an alternative. Because he had one opponent ever, and that was last year, and.
Can you bring us up to speed on that? Like, who challenged him last year?
So last year was Angela Ambrose, and there was also someone who pulled a few hundred votes, Giovanni Love.
Yeah.
And so they both challenged him. It was the first time he had, I think, any challenger, or at least a good challenger in a decade since he's been in there. And I don't know. I haven't looked at their platform so much, just because, you know. Not to sound rude, but I'm trying to run a winning race against the chairman, and it's
Run your own game.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you're a different
You're
candidate.
so rude.
I don't want to repeat
You are
repeat any mistakes. That
Sounds like a piano. No. But so, do you think your district's gotten better in 10 years under his leadership?
Absolutely not. It's about the same, and we've got, I mean, the pockets of violence, the pockets where people just really haven't. That most people are already not in touch with local government anyway. There's been no outreach. There's been nothing. So it's stayed about the same. I wouldn't say it's necessarily gotten worse because
Like it.
but yeah, it's definitely not gotten better. And there's been no directive from the chairman to actually put that step forward and try to do something to better the lives of
So if you were in that seat, what would you do differently? Just out of curiosity.
First of all, just be present and be active and listen to the constituents and actually, do what a politician is supposed to do, which is listen to the people who voted them in and even the people who didn't vote for them and say, like, look, I'm here to serve the people, not myself, for this position. And so, people can look at my platform, but it's mostly about this whole race is about returning local government to the hands of the people. Because for so long in Mecklenburg, especially, whether it's low turnout or just apathy, people don't pay attention to city council after they elect them, and they don't pay attention to county commission. Even when they're electing them in, they usually just vote for a name that they like or they know, and they move on. And so just getting someone in or getting people in that'll actually listen to the people and is not in it just for the seat of power that it comes with or the paycheck.
Right. Y'all are both in the same boat. You're running
Sure.
for
Sure.
different positions, but on the
Yeah.
same commission.
Yeah.
I mean, what difference do you think as a candidate that you're actually gonna make?
Okay, so here's what I say. Yesterday I came up with a list of things that I did as a full-time volunteer. One of the things that I did was I influenced government to reconsider their wage garnishment for medic. I established the team that went down there and spoke about that. The second thing that I did was I took there was a flood in the Catawba River, and it actually flooded the homes, and some people lost they were living in tents. I helped in coordination with Representative Logan and Senator Natasha Marcus. We got them resources. We also allowed them to talk to Duke Energy. Duke Energy controls the water, so Duke Energy in our minds are responsible for the floods, and we didn't get anywhere as far as financial reward for the damage from Duke Energy, but at least the people were able to confront Duke Energy. We have our grassroots Medicare for All, which Cano and we talk to the delegation. We speak on the importance of healthcare. It's trying to get them to influence their policies so that when they go back, they make smarter decisions for us. And so I've cleaned up streets, I've fed the homeless. It's the activity that you're doing in the community. Are you helping them? Are you serving them? And so when I go to these events, I'm looking, who is by me serving the people? Who is listening to what the people need? Because you can't sit on that board and say, I know what the people need because I was elected in, without actually attending the events and listening to the people. You have to be present to listen to the people in order to implement the policy changes.
So do you think that there's any downside to having a completely one-party county commission?
City council's only got 2 Republicans, but you look at the people I think that it's important to know the distinction between what party you're registered as and what party ideology you subscribe to. There are plenty of people in Mecklenburg County that don't necessarily fall in line with democratic principles. I think that a lot of the county commission, they definitely fall more towards a moderate to, right-leaning stance on things, but they know that because it's such a progressive county now that they're not going to be able to win as a Republican or as a moderate, so they run for something different and then sit on their hands.
So how many of the Democrats on the commission were previously Republicans? Because I don't think
so. All of the ones on the commission they were always registered Democrats,
okay.
But it's always
So it is a fully Democratic commission.
Yeah, the city council is predominantly Democrat.
Okay, so my question is, what is the downside? Do you see that there's any downside to having basically one party domination of a county commission?
So here's how I'm going to answer that. A, I believe in competition, which gets me in trouble all the time when I say that. I believe people should have challengers. If you don't, you have the same people serving and they're not helping their community.
Double trouble.
Okay? So competition, despite the fact it's very hard as a candidate because you have to work harder, is a good thing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the people get to make that decision. So you need to apply to run for office, and then the people decide who is the best fit for the job. So they make that decision, and that's why the elections are. The people chose all Democrats. You know, from a intellectual side point, I like working with you. I like working with, you're an independent, right?
No, I'm a
Democrat?
registered Democrat. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We usually have an independent. I like working with everyone because I can learn how your mind thinks, and I can look at policies from all different perspectives. So whether or not we have a Republican or not on the board, or a Libertarian on the board or not, we need you in the audience scanning policies that affect your people, and teaching us what's happening. That point of view is very needed. One of the things that stood out to me, and I sit in Ed Driggs, and what he said was, you have $500 million to spend on affordable housing, but because the Democrats don't have a plan for it, they don't know what they're going to do with it. Now that you've got it, what are you going to do with it? A Republican's fiscal responsible mindset is going to say, hey, look, this is how we spend the money, and then we put it on the ballot. Okay, and then we ask the people. Versus just, okay, now we have 50 million, what are we going to do it? And we just spend without pre-planning. There's planning to some of the Republican thought.
The one thing, and I don't mean to cut anybody off, we're
Yeah.
down to the last few minutes.
Sure.
I do believe different voices matter.
Sure.
I think diversity matters. It's one of the reasons I probably do come off as an independent, because I was for the arts tax, for example, and I still am for a lot of reasons, but because I represent a rainbow of people in my daily life and everything I do, I think seeing women run for office, racial, ethnic minorities run for office, different types of walks of life, conservatives, progressives, moderates, third parties can shake it up. We saw that in '92 with Ross Perot. Young, old, super young. I mean, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I love seeing the youngest of our republic running, because I think it's very important to get those voices out there and say, let's not do ageism. Let's not say, well, these people are libertarians, they don't have any good ideas. They might have the best ideas. They might shake it up enough to change. Look how Ross Perot redefined presidential politics in '92. I believe it can be done again. I believe with the right strategy, a third party can forever shake up politics, especially now that the Republicans in a lot of ways are going down in flames. So I'm gonna get a quick thought from each of y'all, and I will start to my right.
2020 is going to be a big year. This is one of the biggest years I can remember in politics, just because of the census, the presidential election. It's just a confluence of a lot of things. I just hope I don't go insane because of all the pressure. So I'm going to try to stay cool until I really have to get out on the campaign trail and do stuff. So I'm not going to be doing much for the next couple of months. Just showing up at Coffee Pan Dulce and doing Tired and Wired.
Steve?
I want to give my condolences to all the optometrists out there. Your business model is going to be really hit because everyone's seeing 2020 this year. I've been holding on.
I've been waiting for that joke
all day.
You got menudo poisoning.
And if you want more zingers like that, check out StephenforNorthCarolina.com. That's StephenforNorthCarolina.com. The website's going to be going up later this week, and we need campaign contributions to run an effective grassroots campaign all the way from Cherokee down to Dare County.
He's got jokes.
I think, I guess the biggest thing for me is make sure you fill out the entire ballot and go down all the way down to the end of it where we'll be, so that we can actually so that we get those votes. But yeah, and pay attention to local politics, but try not to let your head explode focusing on how much is going on this year.
Tara?
So, I just want to thank everybody for being here and again say how grateful I am to have such a great community and people that are active and have strong leaders like Jenny.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. For 2020 for me, I have a tremendous involvement in Charlotte Pride and LGBT activism, trying to strengthen Charlotte Women's Pride, Charlotte Trans Pride. We're going to do some more job fairs and some more community grassroots type things for the trans community and gender nonconforming community. Try to get a lot less identities erased, by governance and being connected. It's one of the reasons I'm here. I actually don't really enjoy this in a lot of ways. I connect because if people do get in office or they do make policy, they have a less chance of wanting to hurt the trans community if they know a trans person. So now you have a face with that ideal.
Absolutely.
And if you do indeed, all of you sit in the seat at the end of the 2020, and I hope you think about that, because you can hurt and kill and isolate and segregate and bring segregation against my community by your policies. And that's criminal, and that's not public service. That's not why anybody should run for office, and that's why I exist in these spaces, is to say, please take a minute to think about the humanity of all. And when we say Medicare for all, whatever for all, America for all, we should be think really all and not play small.
Yes.
That's right.
Our next show next week is on the 15th, or 2 weeks from now. Wired and Tired will be back. We do it twice a month, the first and the third Wednesdays. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you go out there and vote in the primary in March and follow all 4 of these fine folks. And I appreciate them coming on.
Democratic
Goodbye.
ticket.
Remember, we're all in this together.
Yes.